Cop pulls over a car, but he turns pale when he sees a boy driving and a crying baby in the back. The sun beat down on the long, empty stretch of Interstate 80, baking the asphalt and shimmering off the hood of Officer Michael Riley's patrol car. He'd been patrolling this stretch of highway for 15 years, and it was usually quiet. A monotonous rhythm of passing trucks and the occasional speeding driver. Today, however, there was a different kind of tension in the air, a feeling that something was about to happen. Michael was a seasoned officer, a man who had seen his share of unusual situations. He dealt with everything from fender benders to high-speed chases, from domestic disputes to the occasional lost tourist. He was a family man himself, with a wife and 2 kids waiting for him at home. He understood the importance of safety, the need for order, but he also knew that sometimes things weren't always as they seemed. He glanced at his watch. It was almost 3 in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day. He was about to pull over for a quick break, grab a cold drink from his thermos, when he spotted a car in the distance. It was an older model sedan, a bit rusty around the edges, but it was moving at a steady pace, nothing unusual, except something about the way it was being driven caught his attention. The car seemed to be weaving slightly, drifting a little too close to the shoulder, then correcting itself abruptly. Michael watched it for a few minutes, his suspicion growing. It could be a tired driver, someone who had been on the road for too long, or it could be something else entirely. He decided to follow the car, keeping a safe distance. As he got closer, he noticed something else. There was a car seat in the back window, but it looked small, too small for an adult. He strained his eyes to get a better look. It looked like a baby seat. His heart skipped a beat. He knew he had to pull the car over. He switched on his flashing lights and the siren, just a short burst to get the driver's attention. The sedan slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. Michael carefully approached the car, his hand resting on his holster. He kept his eyes on the driver, but he also glanced at the back seat. He could see the baby seat now. And was that a small head bobbing in it? He reached the driver's side window and leaned down. He was prepared for anything, a tired driver, a drunk driver, even a stolen car. But what he saw made his blood run cold. Behind the wheel was a boy, no older than 13 or 14. He looked terrified, his eyes wide with fear, and in the back seat, a baby was crying. Michael felt a wave of shock wash over him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A young boy driving a car with a baby in the back. It was unbelievable. He turned pale. "Son," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "can you turn off the engine, please?" The boy's hands trembled as he reached for the ignition. He fumbled with the keys for a moment, his eyes darting between Michael and the crying baby in the back seat. Finally, the engine sputtered and died, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake, broken only by the baby's increasingly frantic cries. Michael knelt down, leveling his gaze with the boy's. "Son," he repeated, his voice softer now, "can you tell me your name?" The boy hesitated, his lower lip trembling. My name is Ethan," he whispered. "Ethan," Michael repeated. "And who is in the back seat?" Ethan's eyes welled up with tears. That's my sister, Lily," he said, his voice cracking. She's sick." Michael's heart sank. He could see the desperation in Ethan's eyes, the fear etched on his young face. He knew he had to get some answers, but he also knew he had to be careful to avoid scaring the boy any more than he already was. "Ethan," he said gently, "where are your parents?" Ethan's tears started to flow freely now. They're gone," he sobbed. "My mom, she's at work. She works 2 jobs. And my dad, he left a long time ago." Michael's mind raced. This was a complicated situation. He had a young boy, barely old enough to ride a bike, driving a car with a sick baby. The parents were nowhere to be found. He needed to get Lily some help, and he needed to figure out what to do with Ethan. "Ethan," he said, "I need to see your sister." "Okay, is it all right if I take a look at her?" Ethan nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. She's really hot," he mumbled. "I think she has a fever." Michael carefully opened the back door. Lily was indeed burning up. Her face was flushed, and she was crying weakly. He gently touched her forehead. She was incredibly warm. "We need to get her to a hospital," he said, turning back to Ethan. "Do you know where the nearest hospital is?" Ethan nodded again. It's just a few miles down the road, he said. I was trying to get there. Michael felt a wave of sympathy for the boy. He could see that Ethan was trying his best to take care of his sister, to do what he thought was right. He was just a kid, forced to take on responsibilities that no child should have to bear. Okay, Ethan, he said. I'm going to drive. You can sit in the passenger seat. We'll get Lily to the hospital as quickly as we can. He helped Ethan out of the car and into the passenger seat. He then carefully secured Lily's car seat, making sure she was safe and comfortable. As he got into the driver's seat, he glanced at Ethan. The boy was staring straight ahead, his face pale and drawn. It's going to be okay, Ethan, Michael said softly. We'll take care of her. He started the car and pulled back onto the highway, his mind racing. He needed to get Lily to the hospital, and he needed to figure out what to do with Ethan. He also needed to find out where their mother was, and why she had left her children in such a vulnerable situation. This was more than just a traffic stop. This was a family in crisis. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Michael kept his eyes on the road, his mind focused on getting Lily the medical attention she needed. He glanced at Ethan occasionally, noticing the boy's anxious expression. He reached over and placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. We're almost there, he said. They'll take good care of her. Ethan nodded silently, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. He seemed to be in a state of shock, his emotions numbed by the stress of the situation. Michael understood. He had seen this kind of reaction before, in children who had experienced trauma. They arrived at the hospital's emergency room entrance, and Michael quickly parked the patrol car. He unbuckled Lily's car seat and carefully lifted her out of the car. She was limp and listless, her breathing shallow. Ethan, he said, come on, we need to get her inside. Ethan followed him into the emergency room, his eyes wide with fear as he took in the chaotic scene. Doctors and nurses rushed around, attending to patients, their voices urgent. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and the sound of beeping machines. Michael approached the triage nurse, holding Lily in his arms. This little girl needs help, he said, his voice urgent. She's burning up with a fever. The nurse immediately assessed Lily's condition. We need to get her to a treatment room right away, she said, her expression concerned. She gestured to a nearby gurney. Put her here. Michael gently placed Lily on the gurney, and the nurse quickly wheeled her away. Ethan stood by his side, watching his sister disappear behind the curtained-off area. She's going to be okay, Michael said, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. They're going to take good care of her, Ethan nodded, his eyes still fixed on the curtain. He looked lost and alone, a small boy in a big, scary world. Michael sat down next to him on a nearby chair. Ethan, he said, can you tell me what happened? Why were you driving the car? Ethan hesitated for a moment, then began to speak, his voice trembling slightly. He explained that Lily had been sick all day. Their mother had left for work early in the morning and wouldn't be home until late at night. He had tried to take care of Lily himself, giving her medicine and trying to keep her comfortable, but her condition had worsened, and he had become frightened. He knew he had to get her to a hospital, but he didn't know what else to do. He had found his mom's car keys and decided to drive. Even though he knew he wasn't supposed to, Michael listened patiently, his heart aching for the boy. He couldn't imagine the fear and desperation Ethan must have felt. He had been forced to make a difficult decision, a decision that no child should ever have to make. Ethan, Michael said softly, you did the right thing. You got your sister to the hospital. You saved her life. Ethan looked up at him, his eyes filled with tears. I was so scared, he whispered. I didn't know what to do. It's okay to be scared, Michael said. You were very brave. He sat with Ethan for a while longer, talking to him, trying to comfort him. He knew that Ethan needed more than just medical attention. He needed someone to listen to him, someone to reassure him, someone to let him know that he wasn't alone. The hospital waiting room felt cold and sterile, the silence punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment and the hushed conversations of worried families. Michael sat beside Ethan, an uneasy feeling settling in his stomach. He had contacted Child Protective Services, as required by protocol, and they were on their way. He knew this was necessary, but it didn't make the situation any less heartbreaking. Hours passed. Finally, a doctor emerged from behind the curtained area where Lily was being treated. He approached Michael and Ethan, his expression serious but reassuring. Your sister is going to be okay, he said. She had a severe case of the flu, complicated by dehydration. We've got her stabilized, and she's resting now. She need to stay for a few days, but she's going to make a full recovery. Ethan's face lit up with relief. He looked at Michael, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for helping us. You're welcome, Ethan, Michael replied. You're a brave young man. You did everything you could to help your sister. Just then, the waiting room doors swung open, and a woman rushed in, her face etched with worrying and exhaustion. It was their mother, Ethan, she cried, her voice filled with relief and panic. She rushed to his side, pulling him into a tight embrace. Oh, Ethan, I was so worried. What happened? Where's Lily? Ethan clung to his mother, tears streaming down his face. She was sick, Mom, he sobbed. I drove her to the hospital. His mother's eyes widened in shock. She looked at Michael, her expression a mixture of confusion and gratitude. Officer, she said, her voice trembling, I don't know what to say. I'm so grateful for your help. I had to work a double shift. I didn't have anyone to leave them with. Michael nodded. He understood the desperation in her voice, the impossible choices she had been forced to make. He knew she was a hard-working mother, trying to provide for her children, but he also knew that what she had done was dangerous and irresponsible. Ma'am, he said gently, I understand that you were in a difficult situation, but leaving your children alone like that was not safe. It's also against the law. Her shoulders slumped. I know, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't have any other choice. I don't have any family here. I'm all alone. Michael felt a wave of sympathy for her. He knew she was struggling, trying to do the best she could in a difficult situation. But he also knew that he had a responsibility to ensure the safety of the children. Child Protective Services are on their way, he said. They'll want to talk to you about the situation, and they'll help you find resources and support. Her face fell. She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with fear. They're going to take him away, aren't they? Michael sighed. I don't know, Mom, he said. That will be up to them, but I promise you, I'll do everything I can to help you and your children. He knew this was going to be a long and complicated process, but he also knew that he couldn't just walk away. He had become involved in this family's life, and he felt a responsibility to see things through, to help them find a way forward. The arrival of the Child Protective Services worker, a woman named Ms. Johnson, marked the beginning of a new chapter in the lives of Ethan and Lily. Ms. Johnson was professional and thorough, asking the mother a multitude of questions about her work situation, her support system, and her plans for childcare. The mother, overwhelmed and exhausted, answered as honestly as she could, her voice often breaking with emotion. Michael stayed nearby, observing the interaction, his heart heavy. He knew that Ms. Johnson was just doing her job, following protocol, but he also saw the fear in the mother's eyes, the desperation in her plea to keep her children. He understood that the system, while designed to protect children, could sometimes feel cold and impersonal, adding another layer of stress to already difficult situations. Ms. Johnson spoke to Ethan, gently asking him about what had happened, how he was feeling, and what he wanted. Ethan, still shaken by the events of the day, clung to his mother, his answers short and hesitant. Michael could see the bond between them, the deep love and connection that existed within this small family. After several hours of interviews and paperwork, Ms. Johnson informed the mother that, due to the circumstances, Ethan and Lily would need to be placed in temporary foster care until a suitable childcare plan could be established. The mother's face crumpled, her body shaking with sobs. Ethan, hearing the news, began to cry as well, clinging to his mother even tighter. Michael felt a pang of guilt. He knew that he had played a part in this separation, that his initial decision to pull the car over had set these events in motion. But he also knew that he had acted out of concern for the children's safety, and that he had a responsibility to uphold the law. He spoke to Ms. Johnson privately. Is there anything I can do? He asked. Anything to help, Ms. Johnson nodded. You can provide a statement about what you observed, she said. Your perspective on the situation could be helpful in our assessment, Michael agreed. He wrote a detailed account of the events of the day, emphasizing Ethan's bravery and resourcefulness, as well as the mother's obvious love and concern for her children. He also stressed the difficult circumstances she was facing, her lack of support, and her desperate attempt to provide for her family. He gave the statement to Ms. Johnson, hoping that it would make a difference. He knew that the decision about the children's future was ultimately out of his hands, but he wanted to do everything he could to ensure that they were safe and well cared for. As he left the hospital that night, Michael felt a sense of unease. He had done his job, followed protocol, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had somehow failed this family. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult for them, that they would face many challenges, but he also knew that they were strong, that they loved each other, and that they would fight to stay together. He hoped that the system, with all its complexities and imperfections, would ultimately work in their best interest. Ethan and Lily were placed in a temporary foster home, a clean but impersonal house on the other side of town. The foster parents, an older couple named Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, were kind enough, but their interactions with the children felt formal, almost rehearsed. Ethan, still reeling from the events of the past few days, was withdrawn and quiet. He missed his mother desperately and worried constantly about Lily. Lily, still recovering from her illness, was clingy and tearful. She missed her familiar surroundings, her own bed, her mother's comforting presence. She cried often, calling for her mom, and refused to eat much. The Petersons did their best to care for the children, providing them with food, clothing, and a safe place to sleep, but they were older and seemed unsure how to connect with the children emotionally. They followed the rules and regulations of the foster care system, but they lacked the warmth and spontaneity that Ethan and Lily craved. Ethan, burdened by a sense of responsibility for his sister, tried to be strong. He comforted Lily when she cried, read her stories, and tried to make her laugh. He also worried about his mother, wondering how she was doing and when they would be able to see her again. He missed his mother's cooking, her warm hugs, the way she would sing him to sleep at night. He missed their small apartment, even though it was cramped and sometimes messy. It was home. Life in the foster home felt alien and unsettling. The house was too quiet, the routines too rigid. The food was bland, the toys unfamiliar. Ethan felt like he was living in a dream, a bad dream that he couldn't wake up from. He longed to talk to his mother, to hear her voice, to know that she was okay. But the foster care system had strict rules about contact with biological parents, and he wasn't allowed to call her without supervision. He tried to be brave, to be strong for Lily, but inside he was crumbling. He felt lost and alone, adrift in a world that suddenly felt cold and uncaring. One evening, as he was putting Lily to bed, she started to cry, her small body shaking with sobs. "I want my mommy," she cried. "I want to go home." Ethan held her close, tears welling up in his own eyes. "I know, Lily," he whispered. "I miss her too. But we'll see her soon, I promise." He didn't know if that was true. He didn't know when, or if, they would ever be able to go home again. But he had to give Lily hope, had to give himself hope. He had to believe that things would get better, that their family would be reunited. He had to believe, because if he didn't know how he would keep going. The mother, whose name was Maria, was fighting her own battle. She was determined to get her children back, and she was willing to do whatever it took. She worked tirelessly, juggling her two jobs, saving every penny she could. She attended parenting classes, as mandated by the court, and diligently followed all the requirements set by Child Protective Services. She met with Ms. Johnson regularly, providing updates on her progress, demonstrating her commitment to creating a stable and safe home for her children. She showed Ms. Johnson her budget, proving that she could afford a larger apartment, one that would provide enough space for her family. She also provided documentation from her employers, verifying her consistent work schedule and her reliability. Maria knew that she had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. She regretted her decision to leave her children alone, and she was haunted by the fear that she had almost lost them. She understood that she had to prove herself, that she had to convince the court that she was a responsible and capable mother. She missed her children terribly. She thought about them constantly, worrying about them, longing to hold them in her arms again. She ached for their laughter, their hugs, their presence in her life. She visited them at the foster home as often as she was allowed, cherishing every moment she had with them. She brought them small gifts, read them stories, and sang them their favorite songs. She reassured them that she was working hard to bring them home, that she would never give up on them. The visits were bittersweet. They were filled with joy and love, but also with sadness and longing. Maria saw the pain in her children's eyes, the confusion, the fear. She felt a deep sense of guilt, knowing that her actions had caused them so much pain. She tried to be strong for them, to put on a brave face, but sometimes she couldn't help but cry. She would hold them close, whispering words of love and comfort, promising them that everything would be all right. She knew that she had a long and difficult road ahead of her, but she was determined to walk it every step of the way. She was a mother, and she would do anything for her children. She would fight for them, tooth and nail, until they were back in her arms, safe and sound. She would not rest until her family was whole again. The day of the court hearing arrived, a day that Maria had been dreading and anticipating for months. She dressed carefully, choosing simple but professional attire. She wanted to present herself as a responsible and capable mother, someone who could provide a stable and loving home for her children. She sat in the courtroom, her heart pounding in her chest. Her hands trembling slightly, she glanced around, seeing Miss Johnson, the Petersons, and, most importantly, Ethan and Lily. They looked small and scared, sitting beside the Petersons. Maria's heart ached. She longed to reach out to them, to hold them close, to reassure them that everything would be all right. But she knew she had to wait, to be patient, to trust the process. The judge entered the courtroom, and everyone rose. Maria took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She listened intently as the lawyers presented their cases, as Ms. Johnson gave her assessment, as the Petersons spoke about their experience with Ethan and Lily. Maria's lawyer spoke passionately about her progress, about her hard work, about her unwavering commitment to her children. He presented evidence of her stable employment, her improved living situation, and her successful completion of parenting classes. He emphasized her love for her children and her determination to provide them with a safe and nurturing environment. Ms. Johnson acknowledged Maria's efforts, noting her consistent progress and her genuine desire to be a good mother. The Petersons spoke kindly of Ethan and Lily, describing them as well-behaved and loving children. Finally, it was Maria's turn to speak. She stood before the judge, her voice trembling slightly, but her eyes filled with determination. She spoke from the heart, telling the judge about her struggles, her mistakes, and her unwavering love for her children. She spoke about her dreams for their future, her commitment to providing them with the best possible life. She looked at Ethan and Lily, her eyes filled with tears. "I love my children more than anything in the world," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I would do anything for them. I promise I will never let them down again." She sat down, her heart pounding, her breath catching in her throat. She had said what she needed to say now. All she could do was wait. The judge listened attentively to everything that was said. He considered all the evidence presented, weighing the best interests of the children. He took his time, carefully deliberating before reaching a decision. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm and measured, his words carefully chosen. He acknowledged Maria's progress, her dedication, and her obvious love for her children. He recognized the difficult circumstances she had faced, and he commended her for her efforts to overcome them. He then announced his decision. Maria held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan and Lily looked at her, their eyes filled with hope and anticipation. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom, a moment suspended in time. He stated that after careful consideration of all the evidence and testimony, he had determined that it was in the best interests of Ethan and Lily to be returned to their mother's care. A wave of relief washed over Maria. Tears streamed down her face as she clasped her hands together in silent gratitude. She looked at Ethan and Lily, who were watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. A slow smile spread across her face. Ethan and Lily jumped up from their seats and ran towards their mother, their faces beaming with joy. They launched themselves into her arms, hugging her tightly, their tears mingling with hers. "Mommy," they cried, their voices filled with love and relief. Maria held them close, her heart overflowing with happiness. She kissed them repeatedly, whispering words of love and reassurance. "I missed you so much," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I love you both so much." The courtroom erupted in applause. Even the judge smiled, a rare display of emotion in the usually formal setting. Michael, watching the reunion, felt a lump in his throat. He was happy for Maria and her children, happy that they had been given a second chance. The Petersons, while perhaps a little saddened to see the children go, offered their congratulations to Maria. They had grown fond of Ethan and Lily during their time together, and they were genuinely happy that they were going back to their mother. Ms. Johnson approached Maria, offering her hand. "Congratulations, Maria," she said. "You've worked hard for this. I'm confident that you're going to provide a wonderful home for your children." Maria shook her hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for everything." The reunion was a joyous occasion, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unwavering bond between a mother and her children. It was a moment of hope, a symbol of second chances, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, families can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The journey ahead would not be easy. Maria knew that she would still face challenges, that she would have to continue to work hard to provide for her children. But she also knew that she was not alone. She had the support of her family, her friends, and the community. And most importantly, she had the love of her children, a love that had sustained her through the darkest of times. She knew that together, they could face anything, as long as they had each other. Maria, Ethan, and Lily returned to their newly renovated apartment, a space that felt brighter and more spacious than their old one. It was modest, but it was theirs. It was home. The first few weeks were a period of adjustment. Lily, still a little clingy, rarely left Maria's side. Ethan, more reserved, seemed to carry the weight of the world on his young shoulders. Maria showered them with love and affection, patiently addressing their anxieties, reassuring them that they were safe and that she would never leave them again. She established a consistent routine, providing structure and stability to their lives. She made sure they had healthy meals, helped them with their homework, and spent quality time with them, playing games, reading stories, and simply enjoying each other's company. Slowly but surely, the scars of the past began to heal. Lily's clinginess lessened, replaced by a sense of security and belonging. Ethan's withdrawn demeanor softened, revealing a happy and playful young boy. Maria continued to work hard, managing her two jobs, but she made sure to prioritize her time with her children. She enrolled them in after-school programs, providing them with opportunities to socialize with other children and pursue their interests. She also sought support for herself, attending a support group for single mothers. She found strength and encouragement from the other women, sharing her experiences and learning from theirs. One evening, as Maria was tucking Ethan and Lily into bed, she looked at them, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. They were sleeping peacefully, their faces relaxed and happy. She kissed them gently on their foreheads, whispering words of love and blessing. She thought about the past few months, the challenges she had faced, the mistakes she had made. She realized that the journey had been difficult, but it had also been transformative. She had grown as a person, as a mother. She had learned the true meaning of resilience, the power of perseverance, and the unwavering strength of a mother's love. She also thought about Michael, the police officer who had stopped them on that fateful day. She knew that his actions had set in motion a chain of events that had changed their lives forever. She was grateful for his compassion, his understanding, his willingness to see beyond the surface. She knew that she would never forget what he had done for her family. He had not just enforced the law, he had shown her kindness, empathy, and respect. He had given her hope when she had felt lost and alone. Maria knew that she had been given a second chance, a new beginning. She was determined to make the most of it, to create a happy and loving home for her children, to give them the life they deserved. She knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. She had her children, and they had each other, and that was all that mattered. They were a family, bound together by love, resilience, and the unwavering spirit of hope. Their new beginning was a testament to the enduring power of family, the strength of the human spirit, and the possibility of redemption.